you were told to be, but who you truly are. And I want to begin tonight by telling you this. This is not a story about rejecting anyone. This is a story about embracing truth, peace, and wholeness. I was raised in a Christian home, church on Sundays, choir rehearsals, scripture on the walls. And I loved Godot. I did. But somewhere along the way, questions started tapping at the back of my mind, not out of rebellion, but out of longing. Longing to understand the very nature of God, the purpose of my existence, and what it truly means to live in surrender. Christianity gave me a language to begin my spiritual journey. But I began to feel like I was swimming in a circle big on emotion, but sometimes lacking clarity. The questions that kept me up at night. Who is God? Really? What does he want from me? Why am I here? Weren't being answered in the way my soul was crying out for. And then Islam. I didn't come to Islam overnight. I didn't wake up and say, I'm done with Christianity. No, it was more like falling in love slowly, through listening, through reading, through silence. The first time I heard the Quran recited, something inside me stood still, not out of fear, but out of recognition. It was like my soul finally found its echo. In Islam, I found a faith that said, God is not a man, he does not sleep, he does not beget, he is one, eternal, and utterly unlike his creation. That made sense to me. That aligned with the God I felt in my heart all along but couldn't explain. What Islam gave me was not just answers, but structure. 5 prayers a day, not as a chore, but as anchors. Fasting not to punish the body, but to purify the soul. Charity not just to give, but to grow. Submission not as blind faith, but as conscious choice. You see, I didn't leave Christianity out of anger. I left because I wanted more than Sunday sermons and emotional highs. I wanted a way of life that would hold me accountable every day, not just one day. I found that in Islam, and I found a family Muslims who didn't look like me, speak like me, or grow up like me, but who welcomed me as a sister in faith just because I said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So to those of you on a journey, wondering, questioning, searching, I say this with all the love in my heart. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to grow. And don't be afraid to walk away from what is comfortable to reach what is truthful. Because the moment I stopped living someone else's version of faith and started seeking God on his terms, that's the moment I truly came home.
There's a moment when inherited beliefs no
Yeah,
longer satisfy the soul, not
that
because
was
they are wrong in
that was the mom Oprah. So good day, everybody. So we will be bringing Al Jazeera news headlines, you know, just to get you updated about the current situation in the world. So I hope you are here to get some latest from our ongoing situation in the world today. So we're just here to give you some headlines and we will be giving you the headlines. So stay tuned. Uh, yeah. We'll be giving you the war headlines.
Award ceremony, which will
That
be
will speak
held
a
on
lot
December 9th,
about the
2025.
ongoing
For
situation.
more information,
Things
please
that
visit the
we
website
face right now.
www.hta.qa.
I'll get to it and we'll give you the war headlines.
A sense of belonging.
You
Yeah.
walk down any street in Parkdale and you can feel the presence of the Tibetan community.
And the everyday heroes keeping communities together.
Loga is always Loga.
So what are you guys doing today?
Al Jazeera visits a Tibetan community
Good.
in Toronto, Canada, where locals
good,
are
good.
fighting to maintain their identity in the face of
So,
skyrocketing rents and
we'll
gentrification.
be
A sense of community on Al Jazeera.
Like I said, I'll be giving you the war headlines. Why are you not speaking here? Can we stop the sharing first and then?
Members call on Israel to honour the ceasefire agreement and allow more aid into Gaza. The leader of Sudan's paramilitary RSF announces a 3-month truce a day after the army rejected a US-backed ceasefire proposal. Plus,
That's your war headlines today.
I know
5
that
minutes.
Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude is going to be the same. I'm innocent.
No more famous than me.
a US federal judge dismisses the case against former FBI Chief James Comey. The Justice Department says it will appeal. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says any deal to end the war with Russia needs to strengthen his country, not weaken it. He made the comments while addressing Sweden's parliament, saying more work is needed to achieve real peace. It comes a day after talks in Geneva between US and Ukrainian officials to thrash out Washington's so-called 28-point plan. Rory Challens reports from Kyiv.
There's a sense of gloom on the streets of Kyiv right now. And it's not just the army's difficulties at the front, a major domestic corruption scandal, and strictly rationed electricity because of Russian strikes on the power grid. It's also the feeling among people that once again, Ukraine's allies and enemies are trying to dictate their country's future.
Trump's special plan is, in general, a capitulation for Ukraine. I don't think the Ukrainian people will agree.
I don't believe there will be a lasting peace after these negotiations because there is a side that cannot be trusted.
There have been so many of these agreements, but no results. I don't believe in it.
Ukraine's leadership is more positive. President Volodymyr Zelensky's right-hand man, Andrei Yermak, traveled to Geneva on Sunday to thrash out changes to Washington's 28-point peace plan with the US Secretary of State and the Europeans. Details aren't known yet, but Washington and Kyiv said in a joint statement they had drafted a refined peace framework.
We managed to keep extremely sensitive points on the table, including the full release of all Ukrainian prisoners of war under the all for all formula, and civilians, and the complete return of Ukrainian children abducted by Russia. These are important steps, but to achieve real peace, more is needed.
This is a high-stakes moment in the trajectory of the war. Highlighting this, Europe's leaders held an informal meeting about Ukraine on the sidelines of an EU-African Union summit in Angola. Borders cannot be changed by force, they insist, and making Ukraine do this would be rewarding Russian aggression.
Ukraine's territory and sovereignty must be respected. Only Ukraine, as a sovereign country, can make decisions regarding its armed forces. The choice of their destiny is in their own hands.
Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities are unrelenting. This was Kharkiv on Monday.
We don't believe in peace negotiations because while they sit at negotiating table with a pen, we are hit by missiles and bombs. People die.
US President Donald Trump says Ukraine has until Thursday to decide on the deal.
There's an undeniable sense of deja vu here. Back in August, after the Putin-Trump summit in Alaska, Ukraine's government, together with European allies, mobilized to try to put the brakes on a deal they felt was essentially a Kremlin wish list. Zelensky's tactic then, as now, was to work with the deal, try to change it more to Ukraine's liking, and so that if it falls apart, it's because of Vladimir Putin, not him. And Donald Trump sees Russia as being the enemy of peace. Rory Challens, Al Jazeera, Kiev.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin says Europe's counter-proposal to the US plan to end the Ukraine war is unconstructive and doesn't work for Russia. Yulia Shapovalova has been following developments from Moscow.
In Russia, many have been skeptical that Moscow would accept this revised plan, which reflected Ukrainian and European interests. Vladimir Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, stated that the Trump peace plan would undergo modifications by all sides, like Russia, Ukraine, Europe, as well as the USA. But he said that many positions of the current European and Ukrainian plan, which Moscow saw earlier, now seems unacceptable for the country. And Moscow called it unproductive and said that it's not suitable for Russia. And also, Russia received a signal from the US to meet in person and start negotiations and discussions on the plan for Ukraine. But at the moment, no concrete agreements have been made. Earlier on today, Vladimir Putin, in his telephone conversation with Turkish President Erdogan, noted that the version of the US peace plan earlier reviewed by Moscow could serve as the basis for the final peaceful settlement. But the Russian side actually says that its interests should be respected, and it is interested in political and diplomatic resolution of the Ukrainian crisis. But once again, if all Russian conditions and interests are not taken into account, then, according to Vladimir Putin, Russia is ready to continue its fight on the battlefield, as it is quite successful there, because it wants to achieve its goals no matter what. Yulia Shapovalova, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
And the White House has given its first response to the talks in Geneva between US, European and Ukrainian officials. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says everyone involved is feeling optimistic about the progress made.
Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, the whole team really worked through the points of that 28-point peace plan that the United States authored with input from both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians. And ultimately, the vast majority of these points have been agreed upon. The Ukrainians have worked on language with us together, and you heard that from their delegation directly yesterday. So we feel as though we're in a very good place. Of course, we have to make sure that all of these points are agreed to. And then, of course, we're going to have to make sure the other party in this war, the Russians, agree to them as well. But I think the president deserves a great deal of credit for the amount of energy and effort he's put into trying to bring these two sides to an end of this war. He wants to see this killing stop. As for any deadlines, he wants to see this end as soon as possible.
The armed group Islamic Jihad says it's recovered the body of another captive in Gaza, one of 3 remaining in the Strip. The remains were found in the Nuseirat camp in central Gaza. If the body is identified, 2 more will have to be recovered under the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Israel is supposed to return the bodies of 15 Palestinians in exchange for each captive's body. The controversial US and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has ended its operations in the Strip, saying it succeeded in its mission. Israel forced the United Nations to hand over food distribution to the GHF in May. But nearly 2,000 Palestinians seeking food were shot dead by Israeli soldiers or GHF contractors. The UN called the sites a death trap. The group also supported Israel's policy of forced transfer of Palestinians by selectively distributing aid from centres set up in concentration zones in southern Gaza. Several members of the UN Security Council are calling on Israel to honour the Gaza ceasefire agreement by opening more border crossings to facilitate entry of aid. At a meeting, the UN acknowledged supplies getting into the Strip are still woefully insufficient. Gabriel Elizondo reports from the United Nations.
At a meeting of the UN Security Council, the message to Israel was clear: abide by the ceasefire agreement and open more border crossings to unimpeded entry of aid into Gaza, as the ceasefire agreement demands, and grant permission for more humanitarian workers' entry to the Strip.
In line with the most recent advisory opinion of International Court of Justice, we repeat calling for lifting all restrictions on aid and humanitarian action, including the work of international NGOs.
Since the ceasefire went into effect last month, Israel has only opened 3 border crossings and is directing aid convoys through congested roads, slowing delivery.
Has the UN made any progress with Israel on allowing more aid in or opening up more border crossings?
We continue to have 3 crossings that are open: Karim Shalom, Karim Abu Salam, and Isufim and Zikim on alternate days. We continue to push for more aid to go in, for more NGOs to be registered, to be officially allowed to import material under the 2720 mechanism. So, has there been a breakthrough? No, but we continue to push on these issues.
Time is running out. The UN says 1.5 million Palestinians in Gaza are in need of emergency shelter as winter sets in.
The UN and its partners are still facing challenges in providing shelter materials such as tents and blankets. As we enter the winter months, these delays must be urgently resolved.
Every crossing and route must be opened without delay, and essential items, including shelter kits and medical supplies, allowed in.
A UN spokesperson was asked, is enough aid getting into Gaza? He had a one-word answer: no. But since the UN was not a direct party to the ceasefire negotiations, nor its implementation, it's limited in how much leverage it has on Israel, and now the UN is simply relegated to delivering any aid that is allowed in. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera at the United Nations in New York.
Israeli forces have fired live ammunition and tear gas in Nablus in the occupied West Bank. The army says its troops have been confronting armed factions in the east of the city. The military's carried out at least 3 raids on Nablus in the last week. The UK is condemning what it calls appalling Israeli settler violence that's escalated in the occupied West Bank. The UN's documented nearly 150 attacks during this year's olive harvest season. That's the highest level recorded in recent years.
Stability in the West Bank is essential to any sustainable peace. Yet we've seen further appalling incidents of settler violence during the olive harvest. Last month, OCHA recorded more than 260 Israeli settler attacks, resulting in Palestinian casualties or damage to property. This month, we've witnessed horrific arson attacks, including on a mosque in the West Bank. These unacceptable incidents must be thoroughly investigated and those responsible held accountable.
President Donald Trump has signed an executive order directing his administration to determine whether to designate certain chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terrorist organizations. Rosalind Jordan is in Washington, D.C. with the details.
What this means is that the U.S. government is trying to decide whether 3 branches of the Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in Egypt, where the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in the 1920s, should be designated foreign terrorist organizations, as well as specially designated terrorist groups. These actions would basically impound any assets that the Muslim Brotherhood branches would have in the United States. It would possibly bar members from coming to the United States for any reason whatsoever. But what this executive order does is instruct the Department of State and the Department of Homeland Security and other federal agencies to basically do their research to see whether these two designations are actually applicable to these three branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. There's first a 30-day deadline for an initial report, and then after that, another 45 days later, another report, after which ostensibly the Trump administration would decide whether to impose these two designations on these three branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. One reason why the U.S. is considering doing this, according to the executive order, is because after the October 7th attacks, these three branches basically gave their support to Hamas, and this is the initial justification why the administration wants to impose these two terrorist designations on these three branches of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Rami Khouri is a distinguished fellow at the American University of Beirut. He says Trump is pandering to domestic audiences and the threat of a terrorism designation means very little.
This is typical of American policy, where they are dealing in a situation where there are people, groups, individuals, organizations who oppose American policy, criticize it, even resist it politically or in other ways. And they are dealing with the symptoms of the issue rather than its causes. The Muslim Brotherhood was largely and remains largely a non-militant, non-military, peaceful organization, cultural and social and economic and religious. They have a military branch on and off over the years, but these are totally controlled by the Jordanian and the Egyptian governments. So there's no chance of these people being involved in anything other than making possible statements in support of Hamas or anybody else who resists the Israeli genocide. So this is typical of American policy. They don't deal with the underlying causes, which is the Palestine-Israel conflict or American participation in that conflict on the side of Israel. They rather deal with the symptoms. And even if they do designate them as a terrorist organization, the use of the word terrorism now is totally insignificant and unhelpful, because it doesn't really have any clear meaning other than a terrorist is somebody that the United States doesn't like, because these people criticize or reject or oppose the policies of the United States. So if they do impose sanctions, well, first of all, these groups don't have bank accounts in the U.S., I'm pretty sure, so there's no money to be taken over. And any action that any members of these groups undertake would be then undertaken under the guise of a different organization or just as individual. It's totally, it's very amateurish foreign policy, but it appeals to the right-wing zealots in the United States and in Israel. The United States is trying desperately to make progress on the Hamas-Israel situation, the fighting, the genocide by Israel, the resistance by Hamas. Now there's a ceasefire that the Israelis largely ignore and Hamas largely adheres to. And they don't want this to get out of hand. They want to keep showing that the Trump administration is doing everything it can to fight terrorism and bring about peace and a happy, good life for all. This is, of course, fantasy. This is American television fantasy. Trump comes out of television land, and he comes out of dramatic actions, whether on television or in politics, and this is in keeping with his tradition. I don't think many people take this seriously, but it's not aimed at the Middle East. It's really aimed at domestic television audiences in the United States and donors who provide the Republican Party with support, and the Republican Party is hemorrhaging support now because of its various ineffective policies.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera. A suicide bombing kills 3 people in northern Pakistan as the security situation worsens after a spate of recent attacks.
Winter's coming back to the US. it's probably going to focus in the upper Midwest. This is the picture on Tuesday. So spreading ahead of it is a cold front. It's not particularly cold, so it generates showers of rain, maybe hail. But this looks pretty nasty, particularly for Michigan, for Wisconsin to some degree, and some parts of Ontario. If you go west, the winter storm is not extreme at all. Indeed, sunshine is out for most of the western states, and it's cooled down to about 14 in Dallas, but I see no showers in that forecast. There are showers in the Mediterranean, southern half basically. So Barbados down to Trinidad, there's a line to the north of that, but they're all light. The rain has come back, scattered showers for Honduras and down through Nicaragua, but it's not much, surprisingly, in Costa Rica nor in Panama, where you might expect to concentrate.
So in the other news for Liberia, what I'm just showing you right here, a lady was arrested in Lofa County. Lofa, look at the amount of drugs. Look at the amount of drugs this lady went and got from over there. They were bringing this into Liberia. These identical drugs. Thank God our security people, the drug enforcement group went there, and finally they were able to, put the situation under control. They arrested all these drugs. Can you imagine what these people want to do to our country? Why would you bring that kind of drugs into the country? Look at this. This is a lady right here. This is a lady right here. Oh, I can get her face so closer. Let me see. You see her? This is her right here. Damn it. This is all drugs. Wow. She was arrested to Foya, Lofa County. Let me go to the headline there and see what actually they say. So let me see what they say here. So what is saying here? Just in. It happened on the 22nd of this month, 2 days ago. The Liberian Drug Enforcement Agency, LDA, Lofa Detachment has arrested. Detachment has arrested 30-year-old. Let me just say Blessing William of Johnsonville. She went from Johnsonville in town. So she went to Lofa County. She was traveling with these drugs. Damn it. What? Monrovia, Liberia, possessing a large quantity of Tramadol. That is the drug's name, Tramadol. The suspect was apprehended on November 21st. Okay, it was on the 21st when they arrested her at the Vonjama Monrovia parking with 839 packs and 2 strips of Tramadol, value at LD, the US, let me give you the US figure, $46,000, $633.33. Whether is undergoing an investigation right now and will be sent to court in accordance with the new drugs law. So that's one of your Liberian lady right there that was arrested by our drug enforcement officer in Liberia. So let's see what we got on news here on Liberia. Oh, this happened when? Oh, this happened way long time. Another group of guys. These are old news. So I'm looking for new thing. This is October, no. November 11. Another drugs? Now look at this, my people. This happened November 11. You see this? All this just dropped for our children. Wow, this is huge. Lord have mercy on us. Wow. So like I'm showing you right now. So these are all drugs. Yeah, so what you got? And I think so far we will try to find you news so that at least we can just be like that all day, but I'll try to find you news. What is this front page? A staffer of Vice President Jeremiah Kun. Ooh, this one interesting, oh my people. I'll do Chiche Poleo. I'll play this one. A Jeremiah Kun staffer here. The Vice President.
Liberia's Drug Enforcement Agency officers to release a drug. Liberia's drug war has hit the heart of government. A staff of Vice President Jeremiah Kwanko were arrested for allegedly trying to bribe Liberia's Drug Enforcement Agency officers to release a drug suspect. Clifford Payne, arrested Monday, November 24, reportedly offered cash to officers in exchange for freeing a detainee. LDA sources say Payne was immediately seized and transported in a national security vehicle. Doing identity checks, he revealed he worked on the Vice President's office. The arrest has sparked public outrage. A revive long-standing complaints that political influence undermines drug enforcement in Liberia. Vice President Kun has distanced himself, saying anyone connected to my office who engages in drug-related activities will face the full weight of the law. Critics say the scandal exposes weaknesses in vetting and discipline, while activists warn it highlights the urgent need for stronger anti-drug measures and accountability for public officials. All eyes are now on whether Payne will face prosecution. For many Liberians, this case is a test of whether the drug fight is real or just rhetoric. Reporting for Front Page.
That's it. That was Jeremiah Kun staffer. One of his staffers was arrested for bribery. He wanted to bribe the enforcement officers. I don't know why he wanted to do that. But according to the news, Jeremiah Kun have already told the people that any of his staff were connected, anybody that in his office connected with any drugs activity will face the full weight of the law. You see? So that's it. So on today, I think I'll be ending here. and nothing much. I'll be going away, to, let me see what we got here. I'll be ending here. I just come here for fun, man. We're not really doing real thing here, man. Come here, come and check to see. I can have some fun, yeah, So yeah, yeah, man. So I would say thanks everybody for watching. I don't come and stay too long here, man. So, traveling today, so. So thank you for watching.